I've been documenting a lot of my travels over the past couple of years, most of which has been through Latin America. But this August, I actually had the opportunity to live in Ho Chi Minh City, or Saigon, Vietnam. This actually came up because of work. I'm now kind of acting as a conduit between our US operations and our Vietnam team. And so went out there to hire some people and train some people. I typically don't cover work on this channel, and I won't cover it much in this video, but this is a new country, completely new opportunity, new part of the world. So I wanted to highlight some of the experiences and stories from that month in Vietnam. Here we go. So the majority of the time, honestly, I was just working, and so I didn't get into as many adventures or have as many crazy stories as my typical travels. I was staying in a pretty touristy, nice part of town. I just was honestly putting in crazy hours during this time. I didn't connect with as many locals as I typically do outside of my team there, who were amazing to have to show me around. Really, the only times I got out to explore were on the weekends a couple days. But even though most of my day was relatively structured and either behind a computer or meeting with the team, it was still such a unique and special month, because every single part of my day was still very different from my work life back in the States or in Mexico. From taking a motorbike into work to the incredible food that we had every single meal. There was never a bad meal the entire month, to the tiny little chairs that we ate the meals in on the side of the road. All of those cultural differences are what makes traveling so much fun for me. And that was certainly true the second weekend I was there. It was the first time I finally got out of the city and went on a little adventure. And wow, it was everything that I hoped for and more in terms of a cultural experience. So if you know me, you know that I've been interested in Eastern philosophy and specifically Buddhism for a long time. And given that Buddhism is the most common religion in Vietnam, and Thich Nhat Hanh, who is the author who basically introduced me to Eastern thought, is from Vietnam, definitely wanted to have some sort of experience. Luckily for me, one of my work colleagues wanted to go hiking, and I saw that where he wanted to go hiking was near a meditation retreat. So I signed up for that. We headed out Saturday morning at 4 a.m. via bus from Ho Chi Minh City. It was a really amazing hike, very sweaty. It was one of the sweatiest I've ever been because of the humidity. But great views and great conversation. Found out on that hike that my colleague also had read The Promise of a Pencil in college, and it was super influential in his life as well. That journey with Pencils of Promise was what led me to Southeast Asia for the first time, and ultimately culminated in building a school in Laos, which borders Vietnam. And it was just crazy to be back in Southeast Asia again, like 5-6 years later, and meet someone who also was very influenced by the same book that got me out to Asia in the first place. So anyways, after the hike, he dropped me off at the pagoda, which is a temple where the meditation retreat was occurring, and I went to meet up with the group. Now this retreat that I signed up for, it was a page in English, so I expected it to be relatively touristy. I kind of had low expectations. When I got there, though, there was no group. I was the only foreigner that had showed up. I was far from alone, though, because there were thousands of local Vietnamese Buddhists who had come to this pagoda for the weekend. So I abandoned the idea of some sort of structured, westernized meditation retreat and realized this is just the real thing. I was able to connect with a couple people who spoke English, who were very, very nice and wanted to ensure that I had the best possible experience. And so they were explaining everything to me. I was really out there. It was a lot of chanting meditation, bowing meditation, sitting meditation. There was a point where everyone was doing sitting meditation where everyone was supposed to go into full lotus pose, which, if you don't know, looks like this. I'm 6'5" with unflexible hips, so there was no chance that was happening. But there was this guy who didn't speak any English who was dumbfounded how unflexible someone could be, and was just persistent on forcing my legs into that position. And let's just say it was a challenge to walk that day and the next day. Speaking of the next day, when I woke up in the morning, the festivities continued. Now, in this pagoda, it's this massive area where it's basically like its own city. And so one of the girls who I had met wanted me to help her out volunteering at the canteen, which is where people go to order coffee, tea, and other drinks in the morning. Now, I did some Duolingo Vietnamese to prepare for this trip, but I didn't make it too far in the lesson. So really the only thing that had stuck was the numbers 1 through 5 and how to order a drink, which happened to overlap with exactly the vocabulary that I needed for this job. So I completely lucked out. People were coming up to me with their orders. I was taking them, and then she explained how to mix the drinks properly for each order. And it was actually a lot of fun, and I thought it was going to be kind of like a gimmick where a big, tall, white guy takes people's orders, but I actually felt like at the end I was actually adding value to the operation. My time in the pagoda culminated in a ceremony which my new friends who I had met there told me I should definitely sign up for in the morning. When I got to the ceremony, they had me put on a robe, and when I looked around, most people didn't have a robe on. It was just me and a couple other people. The girl next to me was helping translate what they were saying. About halfway through, I realized this was actually a ceremony to convert into Buddhism. So I am now officially a Buddhist registered in Vietnam. My Buddhist name, which they gave me, is Dang Vinh Tan. I hope I'm saying that right. And yeah, that was a very unexpected side effect of this weekend trip. The following weekend, I learned about another religion. This one's called Cao Dai. I did not convert to this one, but it is quite fascinating. It's like a mix of Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, Roman Catholicism, and I believe a couple other religions. The architecture in the temple, I think it speaks for itself. It kind of reminded me of like a Asian version of Scientology. That same weekend, I went on a hike with a number of my work colleagues, this time to Ba Den Mountain. They were pretty exhausted getting to the top, but it was worth it because we were rewarded with an amazing view and this giant Buddha statue, which is one of the cooler man-made structures that I've seen in my life. And now, as an official Buddhist, I could really appreciate it. One other random story from my time in Vietnam was at the pool at the Airbnb where I was staying. I happened to run across a world champion triathlete and her coach. And I actually, a couple days later, got a training session in with them. It nearly destroyed me, even though it was a super light day for her. Other than that, didn't get into anything too crazy for the rest of the month. Just enjoyed the delicious food every day, hanging out with my work colleagues, and the challenge and opportunity of collaborating across cultures and building a strong team out in Ho Chi Minh City. So that is a wrap for part 1 of my time in Vietnam. There will be a part 2 very soon though, which I'm looking forward to because I feel like I really just scratched the surface in my understanding of the language and culture, and I've got a lot to learn, so I'm looking forward to being back very soon in early 2025.